Welcome to the first ever interview of the Migration and Diaspora Speaker Series of the Local Engagement Refugee Research Network, or LERRN, here at Carleton U. My name is Georgiana Ghitau and I'll be conducting the interview today. So let's dive in and learn about migration. Our first speaker of the series, I have Goundo Diarra here with me, and she'll be talking about her wonderful research. Goundo?
Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. As Georgiana said, my name is Goundo Diarra. I just finished my studies in Migration and Diaspora Studies. I defended my thesis in August. I'm originally from Mali, but I have lived in Kenya, Senegal, Nigeria, Calgary, and now Ottawa. I speak 5 languages: French, English, Spanish, Arabic, Swahili, and Bamanankan. Oops, that's 6. I guess that's what the Migration and Diaspora Studies program does to me. Meet new people, learn new languages, learn new cultures.
That's amazing, Goundo. So let's dive in and talk about your dissertation. So can you start with what's the name of your dissertation?
Yeah, so my thesis is called Access, Enrollment, and Retention, the case of female refugee students in Kakuma refugee camp and Kalobeyei settlement in Northwestern Kenya.
Wow, that's quite a mouthful. So tell us a bit about how you became interested in this field?
Yeah, so during my undergrad, when I was doing my honors research paper, I looked at refugee adaptation in Canada, how refugees adapt to their hosts and how the hosts adapt to refugees. But I wanted to take that a step further, just to look at how refugees live in their camps and countries of encampment before they come to Canada. And so in doing that, I was interested in looking at refugee education, particularly the differences in enrollment rates and access to education between male and female refugee learners.
And where did this all begin? Where did you study this?
This all started through my bachelor's honors in social and cultural anthropology, but it really took root when I came to Carleton to study migration and diaspora studies. I chose Carleton because I knew that I had more research opportunities here, and being in Ottawa, I'd be able to connect with different expertise and different experienced researchers to take this and bring it into fruition.
That's very interesting. So can you tell us a little bit more about what drove you to this topic? What's the personal story behind it, your own interests as well, and why is it important to you?
Yeah, so this topic is really important to me. While I was applying to university, both in my bachelor's and my master's, I had the goal to become the next High Commissioner for the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR. And in looking at that, I wanted to be able to solve refugee issues and present refugees with the opportunities to make better futures for themselves and to make better choices for themselves. And with the start of the SDGs, I was really interested in SDG, Sustainable Development Goal 4 and 5, on quality education and gender equality. And the topic of refugee education became really important to me because as we progress day by day, there are more refugee producing situations. And I wanted to look at how, even despite conflict, crisis, and displacement, children would still be given the opportunity to continue their educational experiences and not lag behind their non-conflict affected peers.
Wow, that's very ambitious. Your parents must be so proud of everything that you've done so far.
I did it.
You did it. So let's talk about what this research, how will it make the contribution that it will make to the field of migration and diaspora and the lives of the forcibly displaced. So if you could talk about a little bit more about your findings and
Yeah, so the main reason that drove me to look at differences in variation between girls and boys in enrollment is that, and also look at the impact that parental economic employment, whether parents have a job or not, how that affects the girls' and the boys' ability to go to school, is that in the literature, there's the assumption that if parents have more money, both boys and girls will be able to go to school, that parents wouldn't have to choose whether the boy goes or the girl goes kind of thing. And if that both parents are educated, that means there will be a higher chance of the girl going to high school and finishing it. So I wanted to look at that and see if that was true in the case of Kakuma Refugee Camp and Kalobeyei. And the reason I chose those two places is that Kalobeyei has been hailed as a better model for refugee settlement, in that like it's not really a camp, it's an integrated settlement, which means that both refugees and members of the host community live together and they have access to the same employment opportunities, whereas living in Kakuma Refugee Camp, refugees in the camp are limited by work permits and like restrictions placed by the government. And so I wanted to see if that argument that educated parents or parents with money have daughters that are able to complete high school was true. I want to see if that was true in Kakuma and Kalobeyei, and to what extent whether encampment or integrated settlement has an impact on that. And the findings suggested that like within refugee context, there is no difference between male and female enrollment rate in regards to parental employment and parental job and money-making opportunities, because those places are already very saturated. Populations there are very high, and there is high competition in finding jobs and making money, and so either way refugee children lag behind. And the research also suggested that it's not just money, it's not just economics that we should look at. There are social factors like the patriarchy, like cultural beliefs of like the girl's role at the home rather than at school, being married early, poverty, lack of educational materials, lack of school materials, lack of school fees, which all affect the girl's ability to go to school. So in terms of contribution to literature, this research really pushes us to look beyond the economics, of the gender differences in education, and to consider social factors, to consider the impact that the patriarchy has on inhibiting girls from going to school, from completing secondary school, and from staying in school.
Wow, that's very interesting. Yeah, definitely. We as researchers, we really look at the quantitative data, but we need to also take a step back and look at the qualitative data and see that there are other factors, like you mentioned, social factors, like patriarchy and these like deep-rooted and sexist notions of what a woman's place and normal gender roles.
Absolutely. There's definitely more to the picture than the economics.
Yeah. So can you talk to us about what your biggest challenges were while you were conducting this research?
So being in the field, thanks for that question, by the way, that's I have a lot to say there. Being in the field, appearing as a female Black Muslim, because of the hijab, Muslim researcher, there were different dynamics in my relationships with my study participants who were teachers, parents, and humanitarian workers. It was difficult to access the humanitarian workers and to access refugees in the camp, just because most humanitarian workers and most people who control access to these camps thought that I was a Somali refugee. So like I really had to take the time to step back and explain that I wore the hijab, I'm Black, but I'm not a Somali refugee. At first they were like, oh, can we see your manifest? Like why do you want to do this research? Who are you, kind of thing? Can we see your refugee manifest? And I was like, I don't have a refugee manifest just because I'm not a refugee. And just taking the time to explain to them, to provide them with the documentation of my passport, and taking the time to explain to them that this is who I am, this is the research I'm doing, this is why I'm here. And just taking that time to get them to understand that there is no malice behind my presence. And in so doing, when I showed particularly the teachers and refugee parents, when I showed them my recruitment posters and my consent forms, and they saw Carleton University, the capital university at the top,
Canada.
the logo,
Canada.
the logo, they were like, oh, like, where's that? Where's Carleton? And like, obviously, like, they're my participants, I wasn't gonna lie to them, so I was like, oh yeah, like, this is in Ottawa. And they're like, oh, Ottawa, where? And it's like, oh yeah, Ottawa, Canada. And they're like, oh, so like, are you going to take us to Canada? Like, that gave the parents hope that I'd be able to do something for them. If not bring them to Canada, at least to alleviate the hardships and the challenges that they were going through in the camp. And so like taking the time to explain to them that I, as an individual, I'm just a student.
You don't have that power.
I don't have that power. I'm just a student. I'm here to do my research. and write my thesis, defend it, and hopefully graduate. Like, that's all that I was there to do at that time. So like, just taking the time to explain to them that, hey, like, I have no power whatsoever, no influence in determining how much food you get for rations, or like whether you make it to Canada or not, or like helping move your resettlement case forward. Like, I have no power in that. And like, that was a little like tough,
disheartening, of course.
Yeah, it was really like emotionally difficult, just because you could see the hope in their eyes, and to just be like, that's not who I am, that's not what I'm here for. But like, being authentic like that and explaining it to them, it really improved our relationship, because then they were able to like focus on the question and answer with what they actually had to say, rather than answer with what they thought I wanted to hear, because they thought that would influence whether they get resettled or not, or whether they get food or not, kind of thing. Yeah,
exactly. So let's talk about, did you speak any of, like, how did you communicate with them? Did you speak any of the languages?
Yeah. So when I was with my study participants, the teachers spoke English, just because they teach in English, but most of the parents didn't speak English, so I had to speak to them in Swahili and Arabic. And I'm very thankful,
because you speak all those languages.
Those are two languages that I speak, and so that communication barrier wasn't really there. I mean, the Arabic dialect that I spoke and what participants spoke was a little different, but it was still easy to understand. And like, I'm very glad that there was no communication barrier, because that would have made it a little more challenging for me to collect the information.
Yeah, for sure. And then of course you wouldn't have things getting lost in translation. That's also very important as a researcher. You know, you want to get the gist and of what they're saying, and you know, really feel it. And you were talking about how they thought you were a refugee at first, and maybe you could talk a little bit about how it like felt, or how it was useful to you to be viewed at the beginning as a participant, you know, as a participant in your own research, and your positionality as well.
Yeah, so in my positionality, I had to be very clear that I was not a refugee, and that like, because I didn't want them to feel like I was taking advantage of them as well, by pretending to be them when I wasn't. But definitely being a Black female Muslim in a community that's mainly Somali refugees was very helpful, because they were able to connect with me on, I feel like, on a deeper level than they would have if I was like non-Black, non-Muslim, and not a female.
Yeah.
And like
they didn't feel othered, you know?
They didn't, yeah, like, and like that's something that I really struggled with, because in my anthropology classes, anthropologists were always viewed as othering other people, kind of thing. And like, going in, and like, I was really scared that I would be that researcher,
and you'd be taking something from them.
Yeah, that would make them feel like I was really taking advantage of them, of their situation, and taking their knowledge and not giving anything back. And in fact, that's what one of the parents mentioned. They were like, oh, you researchers, you always come in here with all these questions, all your shiny things, all your fancy things, but at the end of the day, nothing improves for us, kind of thing. And like, that was very like
hard to hear
for me. And it's like, oh my God, I hope I don't become that researcher. But just being able to let them know that, hey, like, I know this might not seem like much right now, but if this gets published and other people read it and hear about your stories, hear about the challenges that your daughters are facing in school, then it could mean that they are compelled to donate more, to provide more, and to just seek action that would support your cause more. And it was really great to see when participants knew that I spoke Swahili. They felt a little like more relaxed and more comfortable, like they knew that they wouldn't have to force English, or like felt shy about the English that they didn't really speak. It felt more like
a natural conversation.
Yeah, it was really natural, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So what did you learn about yourself during this field work and this research that you've been conducting?
I would say that being in the field, I grew a lot. Just from like, at first going in, it's like, oh my goodness, it's a refugee camp. Oh my God, what if this, what if that, what if that, kind of thing. There were so many what ifs going on in my mind about like what being in a refugee camp would
those
be
preconceived notions that you went in with.
You read it, like, and like reading it online and like being there was very like different. Like getting there, seeing that, oh my goodness, there are people just like me. They have the same emotions, same feelings, same everything as me. As Shakespeare said through Shylock in The Merchant of Venice, if you prick us, do we not bleed? And just seeing that they are human, just like me, just like you, and like really letting go of those ideas and preconceived conceptions that I had about who refugees are, and just being in the moment, learning with them. And this really challenged me because I realized refugees are not just a number, like we read them as statistics, but like they're actual people with families, with loved ones, with things that they care about, and just being present with them, listening to their stories, hearing about what moves them, what makes the girls want to go to school despite all these challenges. It was moving. It was moving for sure.
Oh, I bet it was moving, and it definitely puts into perspective the privilege that you hold, as a scholar in the nation's capital at Carleton University, and the privilege that we have to be able to study here.
For sure.
So how is your research perceived here, and how is it versus how is it's perceived back home?
Back home as in Kenya? The refugee camp?
In Kenya, or you said you're from Mali. Yes. So how, because before we're talking about a little bit about, about jargon. So how do you want to make your research accessible for people that maybe don't have the same level of education as you do? How do you want to diffuse what you've learned?
I think my research would best be diffused in like infographics and videos so that people can understand, okay, what are the challenges that the girls face in school? What barriers do they have? What solutions are being put in place? And how are these solutions working? Are they working well? Are they working not? I feel like here in Canada, people are able to read long bodies of text, but in other places where I come from, it's the visuals that really attract people. So being able to visually display what I wrote in text and like having that audio narration in the background as well would be very helpful for people.
All right, and are there any tips that you'd like to give first year MA, MDS students like me, for example, any tips about conducting field research or anything that you'd like to impart with us?
Yeah, for the first piece of advice I would say, know your participant group. Know the people that you want to study, that you want to work with. What language do they speak? How do they, what are some cultural and intercultural communication styles that they use? I know for people here, if you're not giving eye contact, it's considered rude, but in other parts of the world, giving eye contact to people older than you, that might be considered rude. So learning about those cultural differences so that when you go in, you don't start by offending your participants. You start on that same level of respect that you would want in your home country. And also just letting go of those preconceived notions. Not everyone in a refugee camp, in a war-torn zone, and wherever else, not everyone is out to hurt you. Everyone just wants to be happy, to be safe, to be at peace, and just as much as you want that, other people want that. So let go of those preconceived notions that you might have and be present. Be present in the moment with your participants, with your environment, and just learn. We're all here to learn. Life itself is a school. Life is lifelong learning. So wherever you go, be willing and be open-minded enough to learn.
All right, thank you. So keep an open mind. If there's something that we keep from this, is just go in with an open mind. So my final question for you, since this is through LERRN, how do you envision the role of LERRN supporting your research and promoting education opportunities for refugee children?
So I'd actually like to say a big thank you to LERRN because they provided a lot of support in enabling me to go to Kenya. And in terms of supporting this research, I would say publishing it on the site, letting other people see it, have access to it, read it, and perhaps helping me to share the infographics I create so that other people have access to it. And in terms of education, I think that, and refugee education as a whole, I think that LERRN is doing a big job in promoting working papers and series and different pieces of writing that let people know that this is a thing. And perhaps in the future creating a scholarship, a young refugee scholarship, or fund, or whatever it is that would help sponsor another refugee, a well-performing refugee from Kakuma, from Dadaab, from wherever it may be, to come complete their secondary education here.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking time to interview with me today. And please tell the audience where they can come and see you and when. talk about this
Oh
research.
yeah, right, that's true. I do have a presentation coming up on November 20th from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. and you can come see me there and learn more about the project that I did and ask more questions. I look forward to seeing you all there.
Thank you.
Thank you.